Okay, now you should have 4 lines of straight stitching with each one just the stitch length just a little longer than the last one. So the last one should be a pretty big stitch length. That's teaching you to adjust the stitch length on the machine. Now I'm going to have you do a zigzag, and see how nice and straight these are, each a 1/4 inch apart from each other. You're going to do the same thing following the outside of the presser foot, and now we're going to do zigzags, and you're going to learn to adjust the stitch width. So we're going to line the machine up again right there on the edge of the presser foot, and you need to make sure that when you line it up that the fabric completely fills this window. If you have the fabric in front of that window, sometimes the needle will go down and catch the edge of the fabric and stuff it into this little hole in the stitch plate down there, and then your fabric will get jammed and just jam the machine. So make sure your fabric is covering that little hole completely. Okay, then we're going to adjust the stitch width to a 2. On the machines at school, there's a stitch selection buttons right here. This is my stitch selection button on my machine, but there's stitch selection buttons right here, and it's the number 2 button. So you're going to push the number 2 and it will automatically set the stitch length and the stitch width. So we're going to do it, I have to do it manually on my machine because it's a little different the way it's set up, and that's going to make it go to a zigzag, and you're going to do a back stitch, and then you're going to go forward, keeping this lined up, doing a zigzag. And then you get to the end of the fabric and you do a back stitch again. So you should have a nice little zigzag that's evenly spaced, a 1/4 inch apart, and then you're going to cut the threads, keeping it nice and clean. And now we're going to do the next zigzag. So you're going to line it up again the same way. Now zigzags are a wider stitch, so every time you work you want a 1/4 inch seam, so you're going to line it up on this right edge of the zigzag stitch. That's where you're going to follow this side. Okay, and we're going to adjust the stitch width and make it just a little bit bigger to a 3. So we're going to do the same thing. Forward 1, 2, 3, back 1, 2, 3, 4. Follow this right along here on the side. You're going to come to the edge and do a back stitch. And now you've got the second one done, and you can see that this zigzag is just a little wider than this one, and this is teaching you how to adjust the stitch width on the machine. Okay, after you do that, you're going to increase and do a 4 stitch width, and then a 5, or a 4. This was the 4. You're going to do a 5, and then you're going to do a 5.5, and those are the last stitches on the screen on the stitch selection, or I mean on the stitch width.